Dan is presented by South Country Co-op.
It's 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning as the sun comes up over the South Country Co-op in Oyen. I'm 2 hours into my drive north, 6 hours to Cold Lake from Medicine Hat. In addition to seeing the lake, I'm excited about seeing a wooden statue that they have there as well. Cold Lake is a city in east central Alberta and is named after the lake nearby. Now, I've known of this city my whole life because of the Canadian Forces base, Cold Lake. Located within the city, it's operated as an Air Force base by the Royal Canadian Air Force, and my father was in the military, and it was a place that came up from time to time. Up on the hill, located on the former site of 42 Radar Squadron, locally known as Radar Hill, on the north edge of Cold Lake South are the Cold Lake Museums, a series of 4 museums all in one. And outside the museums is the primary reason I've traveled 6 hours on this day to see the statue of Wolverine. A wooden statue of Wolverine, the popular Marvel Comics hero, was unveiled in 2021 and now stands outside the Cold Lake Museums. In the comic world, Wolverine was born as James Howlett nearby during the late 19th century to rich farm owners John and Elizabeth Howlett, though he's actually the illegitimate son of the Howlett's groundskeeper, Thomas Logan. That's all Canadian history right there. Canadian history. And now the movie Deadpool and Wolverine has made over $1 billion at the box office. Deadpool is Canadian in the comic books too. He's from Regina, but there's no statue there yet. All right, here we go. Me posing X-Men style or X-Force style. I got the picture I traveled 6 hours to get, and dozens of other people showed up after me, not to get into the museums, but to take a picture just like this. And yes, I do keep saying museums. There's actually 4 of them in the buildings behind me. But before we go in, there's some amazing planes outside. Planes that have actually been used in combat in defense of our home and native land, including this very CF-18. It served with 441 Squadron at CFB Cold Lake in the 1990s and was part of Operation Allied Force in the Balkans in 1999. There's a used Snowbird's Tudor jet right there. Always cool to get up close and personal with these incredible machines. After about 2 hours outside posing with Wolverine and looking at the planes, I'm now inside the Cold Lake Museums, the Air Force Museum, the Indigenous Museum, the Heritage Museum, and the Oil and Gas Interpretive Museum. And the tour, guess where it starts? Right here! It's an old radar base, and so there's an old radar. Here's a map of all the radar sites in Canada. Now, this totem pole was very special to me. From 1976 to 1982, I lived in Lahr, Germany. There was a totem pole we saw every day representing the names of the men who were killed in duty in Lahr. That totem pole was replaced by this one, and this one was up in Lahr until the day the base shut down. It came from where I used to live, where I grew up. I absolutely love that. Now, many people visited Cold Lake, including my father over the years, and a young hockey player named Gordie Howe. I have no pictures of my father in Cold Lake, but here's one of Gordie Howe. Now, these signs are everywhere in the museums, absolutely everywhere. The only thing you can actually touch are the ejector seats. You're more than welcome to sit in them, touch them, play with the levers, whatever. Just don't touch anything else. Also very interesting, the airplane engine motors. I loved getting up close and personal to these motors as well. And this gun turret, never actually fired in battle. It has been used on the practice fields to shoot off hundreds of rounds. So cool. Anyone who's ever been posted to Europe has some of these. I have dozens of them, Volksmarch medals in my apartment right here in Medicine Hat. You get up early on a Sunday morning, travel all around Europe, go on a walk for 10 kilometers, and at the end, they give you a medal. I think this was the beginnings of traveling with Dan, except the Dan was my father. There's the Air Force Museum, and down the hall are the Oil and Gas Interpretive Museum. This blacksmith shop is in the Heritage Museum, and there's an old schoolhouse, and these paintings and sleds are in the Indigenous Museum. And even though the other 3 are a bit smaller than the Air Force Museum, I still spent between an hour and a half in each of them as well. So many things to look at, so much Canadian history to enjoy. Before I left, I went back down to a part of the Air Force Museum I wasn't able to use when I was first down there, as there was too many other people at the flight simulator. But for the next 30 minutes, I had it all to myself. And what of you? Yes, I even went to look at Cold Lakes Lake before I left. And yes, I did get into it. And yes, it was cold, but it wasn't as cold as the time I purified myself in Lake Minnetonka. But I can't understand why they call it Cold Lake. And I was there on a hot summer day.
Traveling with Dan is presented by South Country Co-op.